Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. A Calgary police officer was charged Monday with 2 counts of second-degree murder after an investigation by the Alberta Serious Incident Response Team. Constable Craig Stotthart was released with conditions today. In May of 2023, 39-year-old Levon Fox and Wesley Davidson, who was the driver of a stolen van, were fired on after a slow-speed chase. Both men died. The shooting took place near Reconciliation Bridge. At a rally there in May, Levon's family told APTN that neither man was armed. ACERT says the evidence gathered during its investigation provided reasonable grounds to believe that offenses had been committed. We'll have more on this story in the coming days. Decent weather over the weekend in Manitoba has helped in the fight against some wildfires throughout the province. There are currently 122 wildfires in the region, with 297 to date. The annual average for this time of year is 217. The northern city of Thompson has received some relief in the past few days as firefighters make progress on hotspots for the wildfire 14 kilometers away. However, it's still out of control and the residents are under pre-evacuation notice. Fire danger is moderate to high despite the weather. Priority 1 residents from the Island Lake communities of Wasagamak and St. Teresa Point have begun to evacuate. More than 12,000 people from 8 communities are evacuated. 6,000 people are occupying 2,100 hotel rooms in Manitoba, and 1,300 evacuees are in hotels in Ontario. 2 congregate shelters in Winnipeg are at half capacity with 1,100 beds in use.
I just want to remind people that when they're planning to leave or leaving, that it's important for them to pack their medications, their ID, their phone chargers, important documents, baby supplies, and a change of clothes. If you're asked to leave, we ask that you also don't delay. And once you've left, we also ask that you please don't go back until local authorities do indicate that it's safe for you. If you're driving out of a community that's evacuating, it's important that you stick to the routes directed by a local authority and not deviate to back roads or shortcuts. We want to make sure people leaving communities remain safe. We do realize that this is a stressful time, but help is awaiting at reception and congregate shelters should you need it.
Smoke continues to spread across Saskatchewan as northern wildfires burn. The province has issued alerts urging people to reschedule outdoor sports, activities, and events, warning that the smoke poses a risk to everyone, regardless of age or health. Rachel May has more.
There are currently 50 active wildfires across Saskatchewan. 9 communities remain evacuated, including Canoe Lake, Jans Bay, Montreal Lake Cree Nation, Beauval, Pine House, Isle La Crosse, La Plonge, Pachinak, and English River First Nation. With a fire just 40 kilometers from Waskesiu, next door to the Little Red River First Nation, Parks Canada issued a pre-emergency alert, warning of poor air quality and low visibility. People with lung conditions, young children, and the elderly were advised to leave the area temporarily. Air quality warnings are in place for 95 areas, including much of southwest Saskatchewan, the Battlefords, and Green Lake. The warnings advise people to limit time outdoors, noting that mild symptoms like eye, nose, and throat irritation, headaches, and coughing may occur. Rachel May, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
A new study has brought to light significant disparities in residential fire incident outcomes between Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities across Canada. The report by the National Research Council of Canada reveals that the rate of civilian fire-related deaths is approximately 5 times higher in Indigenous communities compared to non-Indigenous communities. For more on the study and what needs to be done, we're joined by Arnold Lazar, the interim CEO of the Indigenous Fire Marshal. Arnold, thanks so much for taking some time here for us. I feel like we've known about the fire safety disparities in Indigenous communities for some time. What stood out for you from this study?
Well, I don't think anything stood out. It just gives us empirical data of what we've been aware of all along. And more importantly, it's going to show us where we need to improve to lower the death rate of Indigenous people across the country.
Yeah, like we were talking there before, you've been at this 20 plus years or more, and some of those feelings about the disparities were mostly anecdotal, but this is referred to as an exploratory study and underscores the need for more Indigenous specific data. What would that look like?
Well, this is one of actually 4 studies that we've done by third parties. There was one recently done by StatsCan. The NIFC, or National Indigenous Fire Safety Council, commissioned Statistics Canada to look at the fire deaths and where people are dying and how they're dying. There's this study that's looking at the national fire incident data, coupled with our own national incident reporting system. So once again, it tells us what we knew, that Indigenous deaths were much more common than in mainstream. It gives us a general geopolitical area, and mainly that it's in remote communities with less functioning fire services, coupled with non-working smoke detectors. So when we look at the recommendations, it means, well, the first thing is we got to do a better job at fire prevention, which is the highlighting of smoke alarms in homes.
You're touching on a lot of it there, the death rate, being 13 times higher in an Indigenous community, mostly remote. Are those, do you think, the main causes, what you've just outlined there?
That's what the data is indicating. Len Garris is one of our lead researchers, and I have no reason not to believe. It's based on the data. Although people can interpret and manipulate data, I think this study highlights the importance. One thing this study does is it identifies where there could be misinformation. So taking into consideration, it gives a true reflection of what's going on out there.
What needs to be done to improve fire safety in Indigenous communities?
Well, the first and foremost is we need working smoke detectors in the homes, and that becomes an education process with the occupants. The cities of Montreal, Vancouver, Toronto all have very good fire services, but if the occupants don't have a working smoke detector, they're not going to get out in time. So one of our many initiatives is to try and educate the community members of the importance of having smoke alarms in their home, and then working on the resources to ensure that happens. We've recently done an initiative with Kidda Canada. I think APTN covered it in Ganawage, and we will continue to educate homeowners and parents and grandparents why they need to ensure their smoke detectors are working, smoke alarms. They need to have 2 ways out. Where there's a push to have a one exit system in the code that we're not agreeing with, and the long-term plan is to build housing that's subject to not burn as quickly.
Arnold, lots we could talk about on this, but we'll have to leave it there. Appreciate you giving us some of your time today.
So the one advice I'll give is please check your smoke alarms when you get home. And if you don't have one, please get one installed.
Good advice there. Ahead of meetings this week between First Nations and the federal government, the Arctic Gateway Group has announced infrastructure upgrades to meet Canada's growing demand for trade expansion. The Indigenous and community-owned company operates the Hudson's Bay Railway and the Port of Churchill. Speaking to reporters Tuesday afternoon, CEO Chris Avery said construction is officially complete on a new critical mineral storage facility at the Port of Churchill. Once it opens, it will triple the existing capacity. In the coming months, the port will be modernized to accommodate more cargo. Avery says the developments have allowed the company to expand their workforce and create more jobs for northern residents. He also announced that a second weekly way freight train is now operating on the Hudson's Bay Railway, a development he says will have both a national and local impact.
There are many communities, Indigenous communities and local communities that are along the rail lines, which will get more service, more frequent service for cargo and goods. So things that we're used to on a daily basis in the cities will now be delivered, more than once a week to those communities. So including Churchill.
Changes to mining legislation in the Yukon has upset some First Nations in the territory. We'll bring you that story and more after the break. Welcome back. After grappling with a backlog of regulatory permits, the Yukon government recently made some amendments to its mining legislation. But as Sarah Connors tells us, those changes have angered First Nations in the territory.
First Nations in the Yukon say they're not happy about recent amendments to the territory's mining regulations, and they're calling on the government to repeal them. In May, the Yukon government announced temporary amendments to the territory's placer, quartz, and water regulations to ease a backlog of permit approvals and license renewals. They allow eligible operators to continue working while waiting for project approvals. But that's news to First Nations who say they weren't consulted about the changes. Concerns about the amendments were raised at the Council of Yukon First Nations Annual General Assembly last month. The council, which represents 10 First Nations in the Yukon, passed a resolution calling for an urgent repeal of the amendments and direct engagement with them to address the permitting backlog. The Trondequitchin First Nation in Dawson City, whose traditional territory is a hotspot for placer mining, is taking particular aim at the amendments. It said in a release it's not opposed to responsible mining, but feels the amendments violate its treaty rights and doesn't address the permitting issue at hand, stating, Yukon government should be familiar with the cyclical nature of mining permits and their corresponding expiries. This surge in permit renewals is entirely foreseeable and could have been addressed by the government with adequate resourcing and capacity. But the Yukon government says the extensions only apply to activities that have already undergone thorough review under the territory's Environmental Assessment Act, which includes consultation with affected First Nations. It also says no new activities or expansions are authorized under the amendments. The Council of Yukon First Nations resolution calls for an emergency meeting within 30 days if the government fails to take action. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
Thanks, Sarah. The pilot of a helicopter is dead after his aircraft crashed yesterday afternoon just outside of the community of Betchiko in the Northwest Territories. Around 12 p.m. local time Monday, RCMP were called to a downed aircraft approximately 1.5 kilometers from the highway near Betchiko. They found the pilot, who was alone with injuries. CPR was quickly administered, but the pilot died. The pilot's name has not been released. APTN News will continue to follow the story. The Canadian Canoe Museum in Peterborough, Ontario, houses the world's largest collection of watercraft. For 27 years, the museum has preserved the vessels and shared their culture and history. This year, it launched a Builders in Residence program. As Annette Francis explains, its purpose is to engage with Indigenous builders and with craftspeople who share their historical knowledge and skills.
And just kind of pull that way. Okay.
Helen Pelche knows her craft. It's something she learned while working in her community of Fort William First Nation. She's been making birch bark baskets for about 27 years, and she's proud to share. It's a process she learned over time.
When I was working at the Fort William Historical Park, we were learning about making wigwams, and we were paddling the birch bark canoes, and we were learning about baskets and bark and cleaning roots. But I never knew how to gather the materials. I never knew where. I never knew how. And when I started doing that, I realized that there was such a displacement from land and community.
Pelche's workshop is part of the Builders in Residence program here at the Canadian Canoe Museum. She's one of 4 Indigenous artists who've been invited to give hands-on lessons or demonstrations of their work. According to Jeremy Ward, the program offers an opportunity to engage and educate the public.
In October, we have a group coming down from Baffin Island, the Hayakut Society from Iqaluit, and they'll be building a kayak here. They're going to be working with our 2 kayaks, which would be actually kayak for plural, more than one, and they'll also be working with our on-water staff to bring Inuit sensibility to kayaking for teaching the public to get out on the water.
Sandra Moore is an artist from Hiawatha First Nation, located a 20-minute drive south of the museum. She's here to hone her skills with old techniques.
I knew how to make a I knew how to make a birch bark basket, but I've only sewn them together with sinew. And so today we use spruce root, and I hadn't ever used spruce root before. And so I was just excited to be able to come and to learn how to use this spruce root. And so now I have some at home that I can go home and use now. Even though it's old and it's dry, Helen has shared with me how to use it now.
That's what these workshops are all about, says Carolyn Hislop.
So for me, the real impact is just, building some really good friendships and making this, just making this sort of a warm, vibrant, really truly like living space. And that's our vision for this whole Canoe Museum, is that this is a place for everybody.
Pelche agrees it's important work.
When I go into different communities, I meet different makers, and I also meet like people who are possible birch bark makers. And so when I do that, I find that, so I was just in Lac La Croix outside of Fort Francis, and probably 5 of the 10 ladies I taught were basket makers. So you actually end up igniting spirits.
Pelche will also be teaching winter bark etching while here. Annette Francis, APTN National News, Peterborough, Ontario.
Good stuff. Still to come tonight, we'll take you to a powwow in Edmonton. Stick around. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. And a beautiful sunset from West Hawk Lake, enjoyed by our Jason Crochane this past weekend. And he in turn wanted to share it with all of us and make us jealous. Thanks, Jason. Remember to send us your photos to share@aptn.ca for the chance to be our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, 32 for Halifax and Fredericton. 16 with showers in Kuujjuaq, 18 in Nain. Sunny and 33 in Montreal, showers and 20 in Chibougamau. 25 with rain in Sault Ste. Marie. Sun's out and 33 in Ottawa. 19 with showers in Thunder Bay. 20 in Sioux Lookout. 23 in Thompson. 21 in The Paw. 22 for Winnipeg. 21 in Dauphin. 20 in Regina, Swift Current, and Yorkton. 23 in Meadow Lake, 24 in La Ronge. In northern Alberta, 27 with showers and high level, sunny, and 24 in Fort McMurray. 21 in Edmonton, 22 in Lethbridge. Sunny and 24 in Vancouver, showers and 31 in Kamloops. 20 with rain in Prince George, 22 and showers in Dease Lake. 21 in Old Crow, 22 in Whitehorse. 26 with rain in Yellowknife, 19 and showers in Norman Wells. 9 in Sax Harbor, rain, and 12 for Pawlatuck. 15 in Chesterfield, cloudy, and 18 in Arviat. 3 in Resolute, 14 in Joe Haven. The Kewin Cree Nation in Alberta held their annual powwow away from home this year. Held near downtown Edmonton, it allowed urban people a chance to take it all in. APTN's Chris Stewart was there.
Edmonton's Remax Field was the site of Kewin's 2025 powwow. Hundreds were here to participate and watch events like hand games, drumming competition, and the powwow itself. Radio personality and Master of Ceremonies Dougie Rain said having the powwow in the city helped bring in more people.
The Kewin Cree Nation partnered up with the city of Edmonton to bring all the powwow people together. They come together and brought a number of youth, urban youth. And I'm going to tell you something about the urban community. Sometimes the urban community doesn't get the opportunities to powwow all over Canada, United States. And with the partnership with the city of Edmonton, they have created a venue for our urban youth to come out and celebrate.
And the event did bring in people from across the provinces and countries.
We have competitors from as far away as the States. We got competitors from all over Saskatchewan, Alberta. We have quite the number of competitive dancers here.
Martha Cardinal teaches Cree, or Nei Yawin, at the Saddle Lake Cree Nation. She says the number of youth participating is inspiring.
It makes me happy to see young people dancing. You know, they're not caught up in the drug and addictions, you know. This is their way of, you know, keeping our cultural alive. This is so neat to see that Kewin is putting something for urban people, because there's a lot of people that live in a city from the reserve and they don't come around to the reserve, and so this is awesome.
Chris Stewart, APTN National News, Edmonton.
Love seeing those little dancers. That's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Tuesday. For much more, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca. And be sure to tune in here tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern Time when Creason brings you your first look at the day's news. It's going to be a busy couple of days as the Prime Minister begins meeting with First Nations. I'm Dennis Ward. Marcy Miigwech, thanks for being with us. Stay tuned. An encore presentation of Face to Face is up next. Have a great night.